Hey, what up? It's Carter from the Peekaboo Boxing Academy, and in today's video, what I want to talk to you about are the ingredients that made Mike Tyson such a special fighter, and why these ingredients pertain to you and your journey in boxing, especially if you're trying to learn the Peekaboo boxing style. My name's Carter Weber. I train fighters over at Cus D'amato's gym here in Catskill, New York, and I was personally trained and mentored by fighters who grew up with Mike Tyson and who were trained by the late, great Cus D'amato and Teddy Atlas. All right, so these ingredients that I have laid out right here on this whiteboard, they're pretty much what I have found to be, just the keys, the keys, so to speak, when it came to Mike's greatness as a fighter. All right, I've read all of Mike's autobiographies. Two of them that he has, Iron Ambition and Undisputed Truth. I've read Cus D'amato's biography, Confusing the Enemy, and I've read all the other little books in between and whatnot to educate myself on this. But on top of that, like I said, I actually moved to Catskill and I actually train fighters at Cus's gym now, and I actually learned all the tricks of the trade from the people who were actually there and lived it. And this is what I have to bring back to you. So I want you to lock in to today's video as always, and you're going to learn a lot in this video, and it's going to change everything for you if you can apply it, all right? So that being said, as always, let's crack into it.
Professional fighter has got to learn how to hit and not get hit, at the same time be excited. That's what professional fighting is. You got to be clever, you got to be smart, and not get hit. And when you're able to do this, you're a fighter.
All right, so what were the ingredients that made Mike so successful, and how do those ingredients pertain to you? Why do you need to know about them? Ingredient number one, and these are in no order, by the way. He was physically gifted. All right, so this is something that a lot of people in boxing, they just don't like to talk about, because there's this very, strong, never give up attitude. Anyone can do it attitude. And I happen to be, a subscriber of that belief, that anybody can box, anybody can become a successful fighter, anybody, can learn how to defend themselves, they can learn how to, become really proficient, they can build their confidence and character through boxing. I love all that stuff, and I am a subscriber of those beliefs. But that being said, you have to acknowledge that there are some people that are just physically gifted. There are some people that have more God-given, physical ability than you do, and that's going to affect their performance as a fighter. And when it comes to speed and power, there's pretty much nobody like Mike. All right, so when Mike came to the gym back in the late 70s, he was 190 pounds at 12 years old, solid muscle. All right, now Mike, he wasn't naturally, Teddy Atlas has famously said, oh, Mike wasn't a natural fighter because, he got a bloody nose the first time that he sparred. I would like to say that Mike is a natural fighter and that he just likes to fight. Mike, he basically had, I don't know, probably over 100 fights in the streets before he actually came to Catskill, and it's something that, he partook in a lot just due to his size. He was just a bigger guy, he was a bigger kid, and he was always fighting people. He was always knocking people out. He was fighting kids, and then he was fighting their dads, their parents. He was knocking, he was fighting a kid, and then he was knocking his dad out, all while at the time he's 11, 12 years old. That's because he had physical gifts, because he had a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber, which is why he's a heavyweight and he can move like a lightweight, right? Not everybody's going to be able to do that, Now, of course, you can build speed. There are means of doing that, and there's means, that you can learn actually in Cus's style, in the Peekaboo style, if you, choose to learn it. I specialize in that. That's what I teach. But that being said, you have to acknowledge that some people, they just have strengths where other people are just going to be weaker in that area. But that's fine. It doesn't mean that you can't fight because somebody has more fast twitch muscle fiber than you, or because they're more gifted than you. As the saying goes, when talent doesn't work hard, hard work beats talent, right? Now, what happened here is that you had talent, as in you had the, physical attributes and the physical gifts, mixed with the hard work, right? Now, that being said, I don't want to take anything away from Mike, because obviously he worked so tremendously hard, and he obviously has that, famous interview where he says, oh, I don't believe in talent. And of course, that's the mindset that you want to have if you're a boxer. You just want to say, hey, forget about that. I just need to focus on what my strengths are rather than my weaknesses, and I need to double down on my strengths. That being said, I think that you can still be aware of the fact that some people have, higher physical abilities than others. Mike was just one of those people. He's pretty much the greatest puncher in history when it comes to punching with both hands, right? You have some guys that were just tremendous at throwing certain punches. Mike could do it all. Mike could really hit from either side. He's really probably the best ever when it comes to hitting from both sides. I think there are people in boxing, fighters that have been able to punch harder than Mike. But that being said, I think that he was the best at hitting from both sides. And I also believe that, just when it comes to that combination of speed and power, there's just nobody like him. And that does come down to his physical attributes. So that's that's number one. That's the first thing that I think was an ingredient in his success. But that being said, I don't think that that was everything, and I don't think that if he had these other things that he would have ever become a champion. I don't think that he ever would have made it as a fighter if he didn't have all these other things. In fact, I know that he wouldn't have. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm 99% sure. I'm 100% sure. He wouldn't have made it if he didn't have these other things. And if you aren't physically gifted, if you don't have all the attributes, it's no reason to get discouraged. There's plenty of things that you can do to compensate for that lack in that one area. You can double, you want to double down on your strengths. That's what you want to do, right? Timing beats speed. Precision beats power. There are ways that you can get around it. And you can also whittle, down a guy's confidence if you understand this other stuff as well, and you can take away that talent from him. You can beat him in the will department, which always beats skill, unless, the skill is so much greater to the point where it's not even close. But, will is always going to beat skill otherwise. So there's other areas in which you can still win. So, let's just get that out of the way first. Everybody knows this one. He was just a physical specimen. Very simple, very straightforward. So that's, number one. And these are in no particular order, by the way. So the second one that I want to get out of the way that I think we're all pretty aware of is the fact that he practiced the Cus style, right? That's what we call the Peekaboo style over at the gym. That's what the fighters back in the day called Cus D'amato style. They called it the Cus style, all right? And I think that this style of fighting was built for Mike. Somebody that, basically what Mike was taught was how to find the openings, how to create the openings, and how to just explode his power into those openings, and how to keep himself basically, invulnerable the entire time, hands up, chin down, and how to just break his opponent's spirit, his opponent's will. That stuff was all super important, and this style is the personification of all of that, okay? Cus's style is the personification of that, and I personally am of the belief that Cus's style is the most effective boxing style that you can possibly learn, but that being said, it's extremely difficult to master it. And the reason that you haven't seen any, Peekaboo champions since Mike is because the style, Cus's style, it actually hasn't been properly taught since Mike, was champion. Since Mike grew up here in the 80s in Catskill, that style hasn't actually been, properly taught. That's why I made this channel, because I moved here, I learned it, and I want to pass on that knowledge. I have the experience as a trainer, I have the experience, fighting. I've been doing this since I was a young kid, and I want to, convey all the knowledge to you that took me so long to figure out. You can't really figure it out online. There's some books that have been written on it. There's Non-Compromised Pendulum, which, Tom Patty and I forget the other, I think it's Dr. Oleg Maltsev made, which is a great little book. It can get you started. And Tom Patty, he was trained by Cus D'amato. He grew up with Mike in the house over here in Catskill. But it doesn't show everything. And there was a lot of things that I actually had to come to the gym and learn. Oh, Carter, this is how you do it. This is how you teach people how to do it. These are the mistakes that they're going to make, and now I want to convey that to you. So that's the reason you haven't seen any, champions use it since then. But I want to solve that with this YouTube channel. I want to give that knowledge to you. And I want there to be an opportunity for, Cus D'amato's legacy to live on in terms of his boxing style. But that's the second ingredient, is the fact that he practiced the Cus style. I think it is the most effective boxing style you can learn, and it's perfect for somebody like him who has the aggression and, the physical gifts of speed and power on top of that. So that's number two. Those ones are pretty, I'm pretty sure most people could figure that out if you really looked at Mike Tyson's career. I think most people can figure that stuff out. Now, the other two are the ones that, most people are not going to understand unless they've actually come to the gym or they've thoroughly, investigated this phenomenon, which was Mike Tyson, and his greatness as a heavyweight champion, the undisputed heavyweight champion in the 80s. All right, so that brings me to number 3, which was Mike was a master, and I mean a master, of what I like to call the 80-20 rule in boxing. He probably is, I would probably put him in the top 3, but I'd put him right behind Muhammad Ali. But honestly, they could even swap out, to be honest. It really depends on your perspective and your opinion. But I think that Mike was probably the most effective fighter in history when it comes to understanding the 80-20 of boxing, which is that boxing is 80% psychological and it's 20% skill based. It's 20% about your physical skills. It's all psychological. It's all spiritual. The other stuff, that's just the foundation. That's just the that's really it's just 20%. It's not everything. And fighters, they hear this and they agree with it. They say, yeah, it really is mental. But then that's where it ends. That's where that exploration of that area ends. They say, yep, it's mental. And then they just go into the gym and then they spend, 20 hours a week working on the physical ability, but then they don't do anything when it comes to the mental. But the 80-20 of boxing, according to Cus D'amato himself and according to my research, is that, it's all psychological, it's all spiritual, it's all mental. But, people, they don't go down that avenue because there's not a lot of resources out there that go deep in on it. Mike Tyson was a master on it. That's why you can listen to so many interviews with Mike and he just starts spewing things. He's a fountain of knowledge. He studied all the greats. He has all these different encyclopedias on the greatest fighters to ever live. He studied all of them. He studied all their strengths, their weaknesses. He studied conquerors. He studied gladiators. He studied warriors. And he's a master at this. And what the 80-20 is comprised of, that psychological stuff, what it's comprised of, in my opinion, and in my research and, from my experience as a trainer, training fighters here in Catskill, is that the 80-20 is comprised of this stuff. It's understanding skill and will. It's understanding that will is always going to beat skill unless the skill is so massively outweighing the other guy's skill that there's no competition. But will is usually going to beat skill. You can break a guy down who's more skillful than you just with your will. And Mike understood that to a T. He understood that. The next one is fear. Mike was a master at understanding fear. He understood the difference between, the feeling of fear, which I've done a video on, and intimidation. He understood how, you can project your fear onto a fighter. You can literally lessen their ability and you can make the fight easier if you can master that. He was a complete master at that, all right? So fear. The other one is Zen. How do you become so calm and relaxed that you can see the punches coming at you before they're even thrown, right? How can you get hit with a hard shot, or maybe you hit a guy with a hard shot and you don't get the reaction that you expected? Maybe he doesn't go down, or maybe you get hit with a really hard shot, and how do you stay composed? How do you not let your emotions interfere with that so that you can enhance your performance and you can discourage the other guy because you just seem like this nonstop, machine that just keeps hunting him down? Mike understood that. Cus D'amato, he taught Mike Eastern philosophy. He would stay up and read books to Mike on philosophy and the psychology of war and the psychology of fighting. Mike, he did all of his physical training during the day, but then he lived with Cus, and Cus constantly was hypnotizing him. He was building his self-image, right? He was teaching him about Zen. He was teaching him about fear, right? But the self-image is another huge one. Understanding self-image. Mike, he learned how to hypnotize himself. Mike had very little confidence when he came to the gym. You'll hear him say, I've been in fights in the streets and everything, but boxing was just a whole different aspect. It was totally intimidating getting in there and having to fight another guy, right? But he learned how to build a self-image up. He couldn't be that great, that great warrior just being Mike Tyson. He had to become Iron Mike. He had to have that persona that he built up. He had to build his self-image. And I think that he went about it in a way that honestly could use some optimization because it blew up in his face at the end. But it was great. It brought him to the stratosphere. And I've got videos on that. One of the earlier videos, I believe, on the channel. It's the psychology of Cus D'amato. I explain that concept in there. of how to properly build the self-image. Now, we're going to do more videos on the self-image because I think that there are even deeper facets to it than what Cus taught Mike. I think that there's more effective and evolved methods of building it to where you can just get scary results in terms of your physical and mental, emotional, spiritual ability when it comes to boxing. But video for another day. So self-image is huge, and Mike was a master at that. He was a master at that. He got hypnotized all the time, all that and then some. Discipline. Mike understood the importance of discipline, right? He was taught it by the ultimate disciplinarian, Cus D'amato, right? The other thing that's so overlooked, motivation, all right? Mike had serious amounts of motivation to become a world champion. One of the first people that I met up here when I moved to Catskill, all right, I was actually, interviewing for a job, or I was actually at orientation for a job, and I said to the, I said to the boss, because he was asking everyone, why did you move here? I said, oh, I moved here because, I wanted to move closer to Cus D'amato's gym where Mike Tyson grew up. And then this guy next to me, he starts writing down the names of all of these people that grew up and trained at Cus's gym. And he was like, he's trying not to interrupt the guy that's doing this whole process while we're sitting down. And he's like, he was like, do you know these guys? And I was like, oh, that's one of the guys that I'm going to get mentored by. And it turns out he actually grew up with Mike too. And I asked him in the car, because we ended up driving around. I gave him a ride home. I asked him, I said, why is it that, Mike went so far past some of the other individuals at the gym? And I think there's two answers. I think it's because Teddy wasn't there to bring the other individuals where they needed to be once he left. But what he told me is he said, he stopped and he thought about it for a minute. And what he told me he said, I think it's because of where he came from and what he had to fight against. He didn't want to go back to that place. He had a massively strong why. Discipline becomes a lot easier when you have a strong why, when you have that compass, when you have that magnet pulling you in that direction. There's still going to be days that you don't feel like doing things. You need to master discipline. But motivation is hugely overlooked in boxing, and Mike had an infinite supply of motivation. So motivation, extremely important, and Mike had that too. Now, the last ingredient. Mike had great mentors, not good, great mentors, the best mentors, in fact. And he also had a great environment to learn boxing. All right, so back, when Mike first moved here, you got to understand this. Mike is training 6 to 7 days a week, no days off. Sometimes he would take off Sunday, but he was training at least 6 days a week, to my knowledge. And he was in the gym every day with Teddy Atlas, who Cus, imparted all of his knowledge to. And Teddy Atlas pretty much, he built Mike Tyson from scratch. Teddy did more of the physical and some of the mental as well, because Teddy was really the one, spending a lot of that time, the actual training process with Mike. But then Cus was building the monster. He was building the self-image. He was building that master psychologist, philosopher that we all know Mike Tyson to be, that masterful warrior, the modern day epitome of that warrior monk mentality. That was built by Cus D'amato. Teddy Atlas was mixing in the emotional stuff, the psychological, spiritual stuff with the physical training. He was bringing him to the fights. He wasn't letting Mike quit when he wanted to quit during his fights in the Bronx, so Teddy had a part in that too. But that being said, he had great mentors. He had literally the greatest trainers in boxing to ever live training him every single day. Imagine how good you would be if you had Teddy Atlas and Cus D'amato both. Not just Teddy Atlas, not just Cus D'amato. Imagine you had both of them training you every single day. How fast you would get good. How fast are you getting good? Who are you learning from? Maybe you're just going to the gym and you're just learning from, somebody that doesn't really know what they're doing. Maybe you're learning from somebody that doesn't know how to build your confidence. These are all factors that a lot of people forget about when it comes to Mike, because Mike had no confidence. So how do you take that weakness and build it into strength? How do you build the self-image? These two guys understood that to a T, and they were just directing their focus like a laser beam onto Mike every single day of the week for years at a time. Imagine how fast you're going to get, fast you're going to get good at boxing if you have all these other things. The physical gifts, you're practicing this elite boxing style, you master the 80-20 because you're with just a total master of the psychology of fighting, the spirituality of fighting. You're going to get good stupidly fast which Mike did get good stupidly fast. And the other part of that is the environment. You know, the Catskill Boxing Club, which was ran by Teddy. You know, there was nobody there before Teddy came. And then Teddy came into that gym, and Cus had him training the fighters there 7 days a week. You know, he would stay there literally from the morning all the way till night until he worked with the last kid, building up their confidence, building up their skill, building up their ability. And, you know, he was able to basically cultivate an environment in there. Imagine you go into the gym and everybody around you is practicing this elite boxing style. Everybody is being taught the same 80-20 of boxing. You're going to be in a sanctuary, right? You're going to be in a personal sanctuary where everybody's on this tunnel vision mission. They're all supporting each other. They're all helping each other improve, right? Versus, what's your gym look like? Maybe you go in, you don't really know everybody that personally. Or even if you do, you're not getting good training. You're not getting technical training. You're not getting technical sparring. You're getting, you know, the shit kicked out of you. You're getting discouraged. You're getting humiliated. You're fighting an uphill battle compared to the people of the Catskill Boxing Club back in the 1980s, which, you know, became Cus D'amato's gym here in Catskill. But that environment part is so key. If you're in an environment where you're going to get discouraged, you're going to quit. And Mike Tyson, you know, he's famously said, I quit boxing many times before I became a champion. He actually quit. He said, I'm done. But he had people in his corner, you know, rallying for him to just win and succeed. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe you don't have that ingredient and you're wondering, oh my God, why is it so hard? Well, you don't have the environment. You don't have the right mentors. You don't have the right gym. You don't have the right understanding of all this stuff, which I could film a 48-hour course on this stuff right here. You know? I could film a 48-hour course on that. I could film I could film a 20, 30-hour course on this. Right? This was given to Mike. God-given. This, Mike was lucky enough to fall into those hands. It's really when it's like luck and fate, you know, converging, right? It's luck, but it's fate as well. That's really the story of Mike Tyson. That's why he was so great, you know. So just this phenomenal, sensational champion, this fountain of knowledge that you really don't see anymore, and he has that it factor. These are the ingredients that made the it factor, in my opinion. I don't think it's because he's made of a different flesh and blood than any of us. I think it's just because he had these ingredients. And I think that if you can understand that, and if you can begin to reverse engineer this stuff, that you can apply it to your life and your journey in boxing. Wherever the goal is. I want to become a successful amateur. I want to win the Golden Gloves. I want to win a national tournament. I want to become a professional. I want to become a world champion. Whatever your goal is, if you can understand this stuff and then reverse engineer your way there step by step, you're going to get there. But if you fall into the trap that most boxers fall into where, you know, they just say, hey, they don't have a lot of confidence, and they find boxing and they say, hey, this makes me feel important. This makes me feel special. This makes me feel strong. But then they have this loose goal of, oh, I want to be a world champion, right? Oh, I want to have the most people liking me possible. I want to be the most important person possible. Because most people in boxing, they come from this beaten down environment where they want to be somebody. But then, you know, you have a very vague course. You're in a ship with no sail, sailing through rowing through the fog, but you don't actually know where you're going. Don't fall into that trap. Instead, understand the ingredients that make greatness and then begin to reverse engineer it, which is why I made this channel. Because I want to take you by the hand. I want to reverse engineer this process for you and for my fighters. And I want to show you how to do it because I want to see Cus D'amato's style live on. I want to see Cus D'amato's legacy live on beyond just Mike Tyson. I don't want people to say, hey, it's just a crude boxing style. People can't do it. No, I want to impart the knowledge to you so that you can take the world by storm. But to do that, you have to understand this stuff. All right? So, long story short, these are the ingredients that made the Tyson blueprint. This is the blueprint to his success. This is why he was such a phenom. And if you learn this stuff, perhaps one day you'll have a similar fate and then you can come back and thank me. Give me a little bit of money. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't make it another video that you just watch. I really want you to lock in. I want you to actually write some of this stuff down even, if you have a journal. I want you to take note of it. I don't want this to just go in one ear and go out the other. I want you to really take this stuff to heart, and I want to take it, I want you to take it with you into your next night of training. All right? So thank you so much for being here, and as always, I will see you in the next video.